All right, guys. I got to be the guy that kills the new conversations. I promise you can keep them going over brunch or something. And you're like, who is this guy and what right does he have? My name is Kyle. I am a church planter in Ojai, a church plant that you guys have supported just so generously and kindly. And I'm excited to be here with you today. I got to be here a couple times last fall. And I was stoked to come today because my head has needed that tan, and then you moved inside. But I'll be okay. We'll be all right. If this is your first time here, or if this is your first time in a while, right now, we are in the midst of a series where we're looking specifically at the words of Jesus. Why is that important? It was really important to me. I went to church for 3 years. I would have never called myself a Christian. I went because the girl that was inviting me was cute. And I kept showing up because of that, but then all of a sudden, Jesus' words started to mess with me. And I'd been told and taught false things about Jesus all the time growing up. And so I go, okay, I just want to go to him. I just want to hear from him. In fact, I made this little deal with God. I was like, God, I'll read the Gospels. That's all I'll read. I won't read the rest of the Bible. I'll just read the Gospels, and I would look at the words of Jesus. So when Brent told me you were in this series, he's like, come on up. I was like, yes, these are still, man, they are some of the most personal and powerful words in all of Scripture for me because they changed everything for me. And I don't know where you're at when it comes to Jesus. I know that some of you are here and you were sold out and you've been following him for a long time. And some of you are here because it's just kind of, you may have been sold out back in the day and now it's just kind of like what you do. And some of you are just here going like, I'm not sure. Again, I'm like you, Kyle, 20-something years ago. I'm here because he or she is cute, right? But today we get to hear from him. As much as I'll be speaking, we'll be looking at his words and listening to what he says about himself. And I love it because I think every one of us has been taught, whether through culture, whether through tradition, just in life, we've been taught things about Jesus that aren't necessarily true. And so today we get to go to his words and we get to hear from him. Well, for me, for some reason, God in his wisdom in my life, especially ever since I started into ministry as a pastor, has felt that I've needed to be introduced and connected to people from two locations. One would be Kentucky, and the other would be Texas. So when I met Brent and he was like, yeah, I'm from Kentucky, I was like, of course you are. Like, that's just all I do is meet people from Kentucky over the last 20 years. My wife and I, like our best friends in life over the last 20 years, Kentucky. I meet people in Ventura, Kentucky. I meet people in SLO, Kentucky, right? I'll save the fun stories for another day. Today, though, we're going to talk about my friends, the Texans, okay? I planted a church with my wife in Salt Lake City in 2009, and we were supported by this amazing church from Texas. And they were like, we want to come help you. And I was like, yes, come on out. And they came out, their college group, and they were awesome in helping us get off the ground and helping us get going. But before they left, they wanted to do one thing. They wanted to ski. I was like, all right, guys, have any of you ever skied before? And one guy's like, well, I mean, I think I put on my cousin's skis once. And I was like, oh, that doesn't count, right? It doesn't count. One guy was like, I mean, I played it a lot on my video games. I played the snowboarding game. I'm like, that doesn't count either, right? Like, all right, here's what you need to do. You need to get lessons and you need to get good skis or good board to rent, and then we'll go up and we'll do it. And they were college kids, and they were like, I'm not spending money on lessons. And what I found out is they certainly weren't going to spend money on gear that would keep them warm. So they showed up to the snow on the hill, and they were wearing jeans, okay? Which, when you ski a lot, like I grew up there, I grew up in Utah, I've skied since I was 9. When people come to the slopes in jeans, you know one thing is going to be true. They're either going to be amazing or amazingly bad, right? And so I'm like, what about lessons, guys? You got to do lessons. I just think we can figure it out, right? I mean, gravity helps us go down, right? And guys, I wish I would have had my video. I wish I would have had my phone on. Because these guys got off the slope, and it was just like the most unbelievable game of bounce off one another for like half of a day, right? I mean, they had the ski patrol there constantly. The ski patrol, I think, just sent like 4 dedicated people to just follow them around as cuts opened up and knees went out, and it was something. Well, what's wild is that there could have been 2 things, right? Amazing or amazingly bad. When Jesus shows up on the scene and he starts introducing himself, Brent talked about it last week, he uses this word, I am. And when people in that day said the word I am, what they were saying is that they were either God or they were a fraud. They were either the king of all or they were a joke. And Jesus showed up, and last week you talked about it last week. He says, I am the light of the world. And I think we hear that today and we go, okay, I think I can begin to understand what that means. But today we're going to look at one that I think is a little more, it's a little more distant to us. I mean, it looks good on a Christian coffee mug, but what does it really mean? He says, I am the good shepherd. He says another thing. He says, I am the door. And if you're like me 25 years ago, you're like, I don't know what that means. I've never seen a shepherd. I don't know what a shepherd is. I've seen a door, but Jesus, are you a door? What is that all about, right? But what we'll do is we read this passage. As we hear him explain it, is we'll get to understand just how profound Jesus is saying he is here for every one of us. I am the light of the world is this massive pronouncement saying over all of creation, right? He brings light into anywhere that there is darkness. I am the good shepherd. I am the door is specific for you and you and me and you and you. One is profound and grand, and one is so personal, so relational, so specific. And they both just tell how good and how great our God is. I'm going to be in John chapter 10. The first bit I'm just going to read and just let you hear it and listen to it. And then I'll point to a few specific verses as I go. This is Jesus talking. He says, truly I tell you, anyone who doesn't enter the sheep pen by the door but climbs in some other way is a thief and a robber. Now you got to understand, Jesus talked a lot about sheep. And do you know who he called sheep? Us. It's not super flattering, it's not super thrilling, but just deal with it, okay? You got to get it. You got to take that in. He says, the one who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens it for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought all his own outside, he goes ahead of them. The sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will never follow a stranger. Instead, they will run away from him because they don't know the voice of strangers. Jesus gave them this figure of speech, but they didn't understand what he was telling them. He's beginning to tell them, like, I'm going to be your shepherd. I'm going to be so specific and personal to you. But think about this for a second, guys. If you're just hearing this from someone who's saying that they are the Messiah, they are God, they are I am, it's hard to take it in. It was hard for me to take in. I assume at some point in your life it was hard for you to take in. He says this and they're not getting it. And so he keeps talking. He says, Jesus said to them, truly I tell you, I am the door for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep didn't listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and he will come in and go out and find pasture. A thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come so that they may have life and have it in abundance. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, since he is not the shepherd and doesn't own the sheep, leaves them and runs away. When he sees a wolf coming, the wolf then snatches and scatters them. This happens because he is a hired hand and doesn't care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own. My own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. I lay down my life for the sheep. We're going to unpack this today and talk about those 2 things that Jesus kept saying. I am the door, and I am the good shepherd. Now, I don't know about you, but most of us just don't see flocks of sheep everywhere all the time. I'm sure there's a couple of you in here that have had some connection to that somehow, some way. We're a little more rural as we come north here in Southern California. For me, when my parents got divorced when I was young. When my mom got remarried, she married this man, and his father was a rancher. And in the summers, we would go to his ranch, and one of the times he was like, hey, you guys want to go take supplies to the Shepard? And I was like, oh, those guys are real? I thought they were just like in the Charlie Brown Christmas, And so we get in the car, and we're going up, and we're taking him supplies, which wasn't super glamorous. It was like a whole bunch of cans of pork and beans and Spam, right? And we're taking him up in the middle of the mountains in east central Utah. Like he's miles and miles from civilization, and he's taking care of 300 head of sheep, right? And we roll up, and he had this little, he had a massive tent and this little kind of trailer. And he was around all the sheep. And folks, he smelled like he was around all the sheep, right? And we give him these supplies, and he wanted to talk for a little bit, and then you could just tell he was like, this is too much people for me. Just need some sheep. Well, in Jesus' day, it wasn't a whole lot different. The shepherd was with the sheep. And he would take them out into the fields, take them out into the pasture so they could eat, so they could find water. But at night, because of everything that was dangerous, they would bring them in. And they would build this stone wall that they would bring them into to keep predators away, right? They would bring them inside, and then there was a door. And they didn't fashion a door. They didn't make a door. The shepherd was the door. You begin to see what he's saying. He's saying, I'm your good shepherd. I'll be with you. I'll know you. I'll understand you. I'll guide you. I'll protect you. I'm your door. I'll open up. I'll let you know when it's time to go out. I'll bring you in, and then I will be the barrier between what is coming after you. This isn't just anybody saying this. This is the Messiah. This is God in the flesh, saying it 2,000 years ago and saying it today. So we're going to talk through just 5 things that we should take in, that we should receive as he says things like, I am the good shepherd. I am the door. The first one is this: he will not abandon you. So if you're wondering, what does this mean? I mean, we sang it in the songs, but if you're wondering, what does this mean for him to be my shepherd? What does this mean for him to be the door? He's basically saying there will never be a time that I won't be with you. He will not abandon you. He will walk with you when it's time to walk. He'll feed you when it's time to be fed. He will rest with you when it's time to rest. If you get into a mess, he doesn't bail on you. He comes after you. Are you lost? He doesn't forget about you. He finds you. He will not abandon you. A lot of people think the opposite of love is hate. The opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is abandonment. It's just being done with someone. When you just walk away from them, you don't think about them anymore. You don't care about them anymore. They're no longer even cause you to give them a second of your time. The God of the universe isn't that way. He says, I'm the good shepherd. He says, I'll be with you. I'll lead you out. He says, I'll be with you. I'll bring you in. He says, I'll give you rest, and then I'll be the door. See, this isn't just a statement for a coffee cup or a Christian t-shirt. It's God saying, I'll be so personal to you I will never, ever abandon you. Verse 10, he says this. See if I can find my verse 10. Sorry, guys. He says, a thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come so that they may have life and have it in abundance. See, not only will he not abandon you, but he is here to protect you. And there's two ways as we think about him as the shepherd and we think about him as the door that he will protect us. And the first one, he's saying a thief is going to come. Like there's going to be evil that comes after you. I've had times where I've given a sermon before and you come down and you have a conversation and someone will go, so really you're telling me in today's world where we know all that we know, do you think there's such a thing as evil? Do you think there's such a thing as Satan, as something that would come against us? What are your reasons? It's like, well, have you seen the world? Also, Jesus speaks about it constantly. He doesn't say, oh, that evil thing, just forget about that, it's just made up. He actually says, no, there's a thief and it's real. And he comes to steal and kill and destroy. He's cunning. He says he prowls like a lion. He seeks to devour us, to consume us. You know, the shepherd would carry around that stick. Do you know how often it was used for protecting? Almost always. Something would come at the sheep, and the shepherd would step in front of the sheep and use anything and everything it could to protect the flock from what was coming after it. Jesus will protect you. Do you see how personal this is? Now remember, he's with you always. So if you're saying, yeah, Kyle, I know you're saying that, but you don't know what goes on in my head. You don't know my past. You don't know what I've dabbled in. You don't know what I come up against. No, he does. I don't. He will protect you. Here's this other thing, though, guys. Evil is coming after us, yes. But we also participate into it. We play into it. And Jesus says, as the good shepherd, he teaches us. He disciples us. He disciplines us. He transforms us. So those ways of evil that we've dabbled in or indulged in, when we trust him, when we let him be the shepherd that leads us out, we let him be the door that brings us in, he begins to change us and shape us. See, evil is real. And absolutely it comes for us, but sometimes it comes from us. And Jesus, in all of his ways as the good shepherd, deals with it in a way that brings life to us. But folks, here's the other way. As much as evil comes at us, do you know what the Bible says we are as followers of Jesus? We are people of rescue. We are people of hope. So we go anywhere and everywhere to bring people out of that evil, like we're on a rescue mission. Jesus says at one point, the gates of hell won't prevail against his people. Do you know what that means? Like we're storming them. Like we're knocking them over. A lot of times we read that and we think it means that they're outside us and they're keeping us protected. But no, it says the gates of hell won't prevail. Like they can't hold us out as we go in to be people of rescue. He leads us in that. He protects us in that. He's our shepherd in that. Jesus never shies away from talking about the reality of evil. But he also never shies away from trumpeting the truth that our God, in his power and his might, always can overcome that evil. Verses 2-4, when he jumps in, he says this: the one who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. The doorkeeper opens it for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought all on his own outside, he goes ahead of them. The sheep follow him because they know his voice. See, Jesus is telling us that he will not abandon us as our shepherd, that he is here to protect us, and that he is our refuge for healing. That we can find refuge in him, and we can heal up from ways we have been hurt, from ways that we have hurt others. He is our refuge for healing. You know, that's one of the number one things a shepherd does, is that when a sheep is hurting, he makes sure that sheep has time to rest up and to heal. He finds ways to protect that sheep, to feed that sheep, to raise that sheep back up to full health. When I was a kid, I made it a sport of cracking my head open. And I did it several ways. But 4 times, my growing up before I left home, I had massive head injury with scars. And last night, this happens often. I was at the grocery store doing that little Saturday night run for a pint of ice cream, and I see a buddy. And he's in the produce section. I'm coming around with my ice cream, and he's like, "Hey, how's it going, Kyle?" I'm like, "Hey." He's like, "Dude, what happened to your head?" It'll happen. This happens throughout my life. I'll know people sometimes for years, and then the right light hits it. I'm like, "Dude, what happened to your head? You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, that happened when I was 10. I rolled a 4-wheeler through a barbed wire fence. I don't know why my parents thought it was cool for me to drive a 4-wheeler as a 10-year-old, but they did, and I rolled it through a barbed wire fence," right? He saw my scars. See, what happens is, as we follow Jesus, as he's leading us and guiding us, life happens. And sometimes we get new wounds, and sometimes we remember old scars. But he is that refuge where we find healing. My oldest boy is going to turn 10 on Friday. And man, I love him to death. I'm so proud of him. And as I see him as a 10-year-old, I remember me as a 10-year-old. And that was the age my parents divorced. And folks, wounds come up, right? I never want him to feel what I felt as a 10-year-old when I remember my dad leaving. And I have a choice. I can go deal with those somewhere. I can try to stuff them. I can try to medicate them. But Jesus has told me he's my good shepherd. He's told me he's my door. He's told me he is my refuge for healing. So I can go confess those to him. I can wrestle through those with him. And know that what he promises me is healing, is abundant life, which we'll talk about in a minute. We all have wounds. We all need a refuge to heal and to find hope. And Jesus is saying, that is me. That is absolutely where every one of us is invited to turn and invited to trust. See, he won't abandon us. He's here to protect us. He is our refuge for healing. And then in verse 9, he just keeps on showing how deep and how full this is when he says this. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. He says, come in and go out. We come in, we go out. That is the life of who we are as the church. As we come in together on a Sunday, and we worship together, we take communion together, and we get encouraged together, and then we go out into this world. And we go into our neighborhoods and our jobs. We go into our schools. And the whole time he is with us, and he is giving us purpose. See, he is not just a door in the sense of giving us security and giving us protection. It's true, but he's also a door that sends us into purpose. See, God, for some reason, decided in his wisdom That as he leads his rescue mission, he's calling us to join him in it. And then he put in every one of us a desire to know purpose, a desire to want to have our life mean something. And folks, this is where these two marry up. Every one of us has a desire to make an impact in some way, for our life to mean something somehow. And with Jesus as our shepherd, with him as our door, this is where we truly, truly find it. See, we all have a mission. You know what Jesus says to us? Every one of us. You don't have to go pray. You don't have to get a special word from God about this. You don't have to take a test to find out how your gifts are. He says to every one of us, here's your job. Go everywhere and tell people about me. Teach them about me, baptize them in my name, and then tell them to go everywhere and tell people about him. And because I've looked up the Greek, I've done all the seminary work. When it says everywhere, the Greek word for everywhere is everywhere. And he says the Greek word for everyone, everyone. See, we all have a mission. What I love about church plants, the stats back it up, folks. More people are saved from church plants. More people are saved in the first 10 years of a church than something like the next 40 of the life of that church. You know why? Because I think we understand the mission at that point. We're hungry. We want it. And then all of a sudden we get a little more comfortable and a little more comfortable, and then it's, man, that guy sat in my seat. Right? But I know y'all, you want to stay hungry, right? It doesn't matter whether you're in a parking lot, whether you're renting here. Like you are galvanized by hope. You are galvanized by Jesus, not by comfort. Not by something that just feels comfortable. I often say, like, once a month we should come to church and we should just wear crash helmets just for the heck of it. Just because that's what life in the church should look like. We're sending each other out into a crazy world. So we should understand that. Jesus is our doorway to purpose. I think it means instead of tamping down when someone's like, I think God might be calling you, and they share it, and it just sounds ridiculous and absurd. I think the more ridiculous and absurd it is, the more we should take note of it. Because that's what Jesus called them to. These 12 guys who really, guys, if you read the Bible, they are not that spectacular. Like if that's your 12, Jesus, like if the guy that's the rock is the one that denies you, and the guy that you love is kind of petty in the way he writes about how much you love him all the time. Like he says, you guys are it. Like the hope of this rests on you. I'm going to go now. That sounds absurd. But that's how our God works. And if he's birthing something in you right now, if he's put an idea in your mind or in your heart, the world thinks it's crazy. Religion thinks it's crazy. More likely than not, it might be him working in you, ready to send you into your purpose. So you read, he is the good shepherd and he is the door. And we go, what is that? Well, it means he is so personal, he won't abandon you. It means he cares about you, that he will protect you. That he understands where you've been and what you're going through, and he will heal you. And he has created you for a reason, and he has purpose for you. Finally, I'm going to read verse 10 again, which I read a minute ago, and then I'm going to end with verse 14. He says this, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come so that they may have life and have it in abundance. Hold on to that for a second. What does it mean for abundance? Then in 14, he says, I am the good shepherd. I know my own and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, I know the Father. I lay down my life for the sheep. I have both of my boys here with me today, and what I love about the stage that they're in right now is they're always dreaming. They're always talking about what it's going to be like when they get older. What we do on Wednesday night right now is my wife gets a night alone, and we do daddy's night where we order food in and we go through some shows or movies or video games, and we've just been going through all of the Rockies. That's good stuff, guys. You think it's awesome when you're a kid, but then you watch your kids watch it. They're like, is he going to lose? I don't know, that's how they keep making these, right? But then they like to box, so I got the heavy bag in the backyard, right? They're making homemade mouthpieces. They're out there working out, like doing the one-arm push-ups like Rocky. I had to put the eggs up higher in the fridge so they don't do the raw egg thing. They dream. My oldest boy, he's like, I want to build a house, Dad. I'll be close to you, but he wants to be, he's like one of those off-the-grid guys. I want to be up on the hill where I have to build my fire every night, not be connected, but I'll come down and visit you. Then my youngest one's like, Dad, when I turn 18, Isaiah will be 22, I'll have his house built. I think I'll live with him. We'll visit you on the weekends, right? He has his dreams. You have yours. You had yours. When we're kids, we see big things. None of us say, man, when I grow up, I want my life to be so just mediocre, right? Nobody says that. Nobody's like, I just really, just give me 40 hours a week and middle income job, like that's just great. Mow the lawn on the weekends, that's all I want, right? Now God puts this hunger in us. He puts this hunger in us for something grand, for something beautiful, for something big. And Jesus says, as our shepherd, that he comes to give us life, give it to the full, give it in abundance. I know I joked around about the Greek language earlier, but in seriousness, they had two words for life that I love. It helps understand this more. They had the word bios, which would mean Jesus just came to give us a pulse. Just our heart beating and our blood coursing through our veins, but that's not the word he used. He said, I come so that you may have Zoe, which was this idea of life in its fullness, in its grandest, in its greatest, that was ultimately understood as life with God. See, we have that desire for grander and greater things because we were created by the grandest and greatest being known. We were created to know him and be in relationship with him. And when we've walked away from him and we've rebelled against him, he hasn't written us off, but he's come for us. He hasn't sent us just an employee, but he sent us a savior. He sent us a shepherd. It says, I'll know the numbers of hairs on your head, which isn't a big deal for me, but is for you. He says, I will know you. I won't abandon you. I will protect you. I will heal you. I will give you purpose, and I will give you the only path to true and good life. What do you dream of right now? I don't care how old you are. That's in there. Do you know he sees you today and he doesn't see anyone but his son, his daughter? If you've given your life to Jesus, he looks and he says, man, I'm so pleased. Like just as their dad, like even though they were arguing before I came over, I'm just so happy that my boys are here with me today. I just want you to know them. And guys, that's a shadow of how your God, your Father feels about you. You go, God, you don't know what I've done. I don't. But your good shepherd did. And he said he laid down his life for it. God doesn't condemn you for it. He says, I come to give you life. So as you think today about what it means for him to be your good shepherd, if you need to know that he won't abandon you, will you receive that he is with you today? If you know evil's out there and it's coming after you or it's in you and it's just so tempting, will you know you can trust him and he will protect you today? Man, if those scars are just they're on your mind, or those wounds are just even open right now, well, you know, you can run to him and he will heal you today. If you don't know what tomorrow looks like and it doesn't feel like your life is meaning anything, making an impact, well, you know that as your shepherd, he will give you purpose today. And that as sons and daughters, through Jesus, he offers every one of us true life today. Will you pray with me? God, you are good. God, these sayings are so deep, so profound, so beautiful. Don't let us write them off. Don't let them become a cliche. Don't let them become a slogan. Help us to see just how personal, how real, how deep, and how good you are as our shepherd and as our door. God, as we leave here today, would all of us know that we don't leave you here, that you come with us into our neighborhoods, into our homes, into our marriages, into our relationships. And that throughout the week we can cry out to you, we can find hope in you, we can be given purpose from you, and we can know true life in you, God. Because of your goodness and your grace, we praise you and thank you. We say all this in Jesus' name, the Good Shepherd. Amen.